Ross Ulbricht is serving a double life sentence without parole for all nonviolent charges for creating a website. Please help free this peaceful man. Go to freeross.org and sign and share the petition.
Stores. So it's little wonder that smart shoppers everywhere take time out to pause and refresh. And where else but in the fountain where they serve ice-cold Coca-Cola?
The eMilitia Podcast, Episode 34, International Women's Day Roundtable. Enjoy, fuckers.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the eMilitia Podcast, hereforth known as the She Militia Podcast. I'm here with several of the Liberty community's loveliest ladies for a special International Women's Day episode. We're going to start with Ms. Buckles and go around the table. Everyone's going to introduce themselves and tell you how they found the Liberty community. Ms. Buckles.
Hi. Ms. Buckles. I'm on Instagram and Titter. First edit or not.
I like it.
Right. Oh, it's the She Militia. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Miss_Buckles, the Titterverse. And I actually have only recently found myself in the online Liberty community. I didn't really know it existed. I've been super apolitical for a majority of my adult life. Ever since high school, I saw some hypocrisy and bureaucracy in the sports because I was a jock, and I was like, this doesn't work. And so I was a little bitter early on, and actually one of my goals out of high school was to be on as little government paperwork as possible. Like, I was gonna get like a van, a dog, a gun, and just like gypsy around the country, like work here and there. And then universe had other plans, so I'm on lots of government paperwork now. But I've always been super apolitical. I just kind of smiled through political conversations, knowing like the system didn't work for various reasons. And I actually went down like a more like conspiracy minded route in terms of like
Nice.
Yeah, finding my way through the like I had heard of the Libertarian Party and like the Tea Party and things like that. But again, because it was political, I was like, la, I don't care. That's some garbage, whatever. And I also avoided social media pretty heavily. And like I said, only recently did I get into it because of a side job that I have. I had to do the social media for that. So I decided to I already had the account. I just never utilized it. So I hopped on myself, somehow found a page that was linked to Seaburn Bug Boy. And I started looking into that information, and then Hong Kong popped up, and I started looking into that, and then rabbit holed really hard. And now I am, making sandwiches for the Boogaloo and posting anarchist propaganda, and I'm an agent of chaos and a proud insurgent, and meme insurgency is a new trend, and I'm enjoying it very mucho. So I've enjoyed the conversations I've had, and if anything, it's given me the proper conversational ammunition to have these conversations with other people. And that's what I want. This can be an echo chamber, as we're all well aware of, and I like being able to have conversations with the normies and the boomers. I was like that before with my conspiracy stuff, but you need that right way to bring it up. And I have enjoyed having good, ammunition, whether it's actual books, education, meme humor, garbage meme humor, even worse. And so that's kind of where I've been at now. And like I said, I actually met people in real life. I went to my own Second Amendment rally here in Arizona, and shook real life hands and made real connections. And that's what I've also wanted to do is, I'm not big into the gun scene or anything like that. But I grew up in Arizona, so it's actually just part of, kind of our culture. And so you hear all these other people and their struggles, and I'm like, oh, snap, I'm spoiled. Like, what do you mean that not everybody just carries and has a bazillion guns in their home? I don't know what you're talking about. So it's been a good, like, we need to bridge those gaps, and I'm here to do that. So
Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
I am a big fan right now of like D-wave quantum computing. Like, I'm into that. CERN.
I don't know what that means.
No? Yeah. The Large Hadron Collider. Look into that. Yeah. I like CERN. I don't like CERN, but I'm like looking into that stuff at the moment. My tinfoil hat.
Do we want to go back to the list order? Allie, do you want to tell us how you became a libertarian welcome to the Liberty community?
Sure. So this is Allie. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both as Allie Jill Tennessee, TN. So for me, I was pretty conservative most of my life. I grew up in a really conservative family, despite being from New Jersey, which is kind of odd. But so in 2016, when it was Clinton versus Trump, I kind of became really disillusioned with the whole thing. And I started listening to a lot of podcasts, especially comedian podcasts. One of those being Ari Shaffir's, and once a year he does a State of the Union with Dave Smith, who I'm sure most of you know. And so then from listening to that, he made a lot of sense to me. So I jumped to listening to his podcast and branched out from other people he included. And that kind of brought me into the Liberty community. And I was a small L libertarian for a while, all the way up until October of last year. And the only reason that I decided to get involved with the LP was with this whole movement to replace the chair and get somebody who's kind of principled out there, as opposed to some sort of like status reject who they usually run. So, but I do consider myself an anarchist, and that's the only reason that I got involved with them. So,
one of the Mises Caucus folks.
Yes, yeah. So because I came in through Dave Smith, and I initially thought like the Mises Caucus people were like the cool ones of the crowd. I still think that
They are.
But apparently there are a lot of people who don't think that, and I found that out within the past few months. In all the dealings with like other caucuses, some of them are just like not as nice, and a lot of people think that the Mises Caucus is not great. But I like them. I really like Michael Height. I like Michael Height, especially since he's a Philly area guy, and that's the area I'm from. So, and they also had back like Mosh Ray, and I like him, and I like Dave Smith, and I liked, I think Pete from Free Man Beyond the Wall was also one of those who joined to do the same thing. So I was inspired by all of them to do that.
I always put like Tom Woods on this pedestal, like way up there. And then recently I've seen all the hate he gets, and I'm just like, what on earth? Where is this coming from?
Yeah. Well, apparently, like there are a lot of people in the LP, especially like on the left side, from what I've seen anyway, who have this whole thing who will say like the Mises Caucus people are like racist and white supremacists, and it's insane.
It's wild.
It really is. I think it's insane.
It is, definitely.
Yeah, because he's addressed, I think it was like because he was involved somewhere with like some conservative group back in the day, which he's addressed several times on his podcast, but people still bring that up all the time. It's ridiculous.
I agree.
Yeah.
Carrie, I know you've been on our podcast before, but you can go ahead and tell them your origin story anyway.
All right. My name is Carrie Wedler. I make YouTube videos. I'm on Instagram. I'm on the hellhole of Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I'm banned from Twitter. And I have not made a new account. And I'm on all the cool decentralized platforms too, like Steemit and Minds and Float, which is a cryptocurrency-based app or platform. Anyway, I came to the freedom movement in 2011. So I'm from, I guess, like what's Mordor to most libertarians. I'm from California. I'm from Los Angeles. And I thought I wanted to be in like Hollywood. I thought I wanted to like write scripts or something. I don't know. I had no direction after college, but I was a huge Obama supporter. And I was like in the belly of the beast, and I just was bored. So I was like, I should like see what's going on in the world, because I didn't pay attention, because that's what a lot of statists do. And I was very quickly radicalized, but I was kind of just angry. And then a friend introduced me to Dr. Ron Paul. And I spent the summer of 2011 up until like 4 a.m. watching ronpaulflix.com. If anyone remembers, that is not a website anymore, but it used to just be like a vault of Ron Paul speeches and interviews, like everything Ron Paul, like it was on there. And I just spent the summer just being filled up with Ron Paul optimism and reason and principle. And I made my first video for Ron Paul in 2011 for his 2012 campaign. And then after he got screwed over is when I became an anarchist, because I realized no one like him is ever going to win. If somebody like Bernie Sanders is being attacked, like as if someone like Ron Paul could ever win the nomination.
Mhm.
And then, obviously, I came to it from a philosophical standpoint of like, I don't have the right to pick leaders for other people and have it enforced through violence. But I wasn't there then, but it's been a long road, and I don't see myself going back.
I like how a lot of the Paulistas from that time, like the Ron Paul flicks, like they can just recall all these, like if somebody's like, oh, one time Ron Paul said this, and everybody who was a Paulista, they're like, oh yeah, that was this debate around this time in response to this person's question. We did our research.
Yeah, because it made such an impression on us. Yeah, I mean, everything he said, I just remember there's this one clip and he was talking about Operation Ajax, when the CIA and like British intelligence overthrew the Iranian leader in 1953. And I was like, he said that? Because that was something I had read in like a paragraph in high school in my public school history textbook. And it's like, oh, let's just gloss over this. And I remember thinking at the age of like 16, 17, I was like, that seems kind of shady, but then to hear Ron Paul say it in a public forum, like it was awesome and so exciting and really inspiring. So he's definitely the reason I do what I do.
How about you, Lady Voluntary?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I really don't go on there very much with my Lady Voluntary account, but it's just at Lady Voluntary. I grew up pretty liberal for the most part. Like my parents were pretty liberal, and I grew up in a small town, and I've always been kind of a contrarian anyway, and so everybody here was like really conservative, so like I really clung to that like liberal side. And then in college, obviously you're just like everything's pretty liberal there, so it's like it just felt like that was like just the natural path for me. And then when Obama was running for president, I was like obsessed with him. And then I met my husband, I think the last year of college, and he leaned pretty libertarian at that time, and like we didn't really talk about politics that much, and it never really was like a huge part of my life or anything, but like we would just start like talking about like having conversations about like legalizing drugs and stuff, and I would just be like, oh, you can't legalize all drugs, like that's ridiculous, everybody would just start doing drugs. And then he's like, well, would you start like shooting up heroin if it was legal? And I'm like, I guess not, no. And so little conversations like that would kind of add up over time. And then it was really like the last presidential election when it came down to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And even when I was like super liberal, I never really liked Hillary Clinton. So I was like, okay, well, I can't vote for her. And then, Donald Trump is like just a joke to me. There's no way I would vote for him. And then so that's when I kind of got introduced to the Libertarian Party. And so for as much shit as like Gary Johnson gets for not being a true libertarian or whatever, like a lot of his stuff made more sense to me than the other two candidates, so that's who I listened to, and I was like, oh, this guy makes sense. And then at that time I started watching like Stossel's show, and like when his show went off the air I started watching Kennedy's show, and then from there like Dave Smith was a guest and Michael Malice was a guest all the time, and I was just like, wow, these guys like make a lot of sense. And then like it's like that meme, like when you go, it was like, what's the difference between a libertarian and an anarchist? 6 months. Like that's like pretty much exactly how it went with me. So it just kind of went down the rabbit hole, found out these different Facebook groups. I would see the debates between like minarchy and anarchy, and like the anarchy thing just started like making sense to me. And then I just started reading all these different philosophers, and I was like, okay, this is like amazing. Like, how has nobody ever told me about this before? Like, this is the most beautiful philosophy I've ever heard in my life. Like, why is it like why is this not like mainstream? So like ever since then I've just been like obsessed with it. And then I started my like Lady Voluntary account just to have like a more radical outlet so as to not like scare my family members away on social media. And yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at now. And I'm just obsessed with it and won't stop reading about it and talking about it. So yeah.
I think we're probably all a bit like that here. And then Ashley from Think, Change, Repeat. How about you?
So I am on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find me on Instagram at think.change.repeat and on Twitter at think.change, or it may be think_change_2. And the way that I came to the anarchy movement was because grew up in a really conservative environment. It was pretty hardcore conservative. And I guess I always kind of sympathized with that, although I really didn't pay very much attention to politics. I certainly didn't, dig deep. And I believed, you know, the lies, essentially. Like, I thought legitimately when I was in college and 9/11 happened that that President Bush was a good person, and now it makes me laugh so much. It was like, you fell for it big time. So then, years go by, and this is a weird story, but I was getting a tattoo, and the guy that was doing my tattoo was a hardcore anarchist. And so, like, everything I said, he had something to say back. And I think he even forced me to watch like a Bush CIA documentary while I was getting my tattoo.
That's so libertarian.
And I even remember like thinking, or kind of having questions about what he was saying, but I just kind of listened to him. It didn't upset me or anything like that, and I just thought it was interesting. And I just had a relationship with him just through that work over a couple of years. And the last time I went back to him, it was the same stuff. And we even talked about legalizing marijuana. And at one point, I thought, well, they should legalize it, but they should charge taxes or whatever. And which is, oh my God, it's just so stupid. But at that time, that's what I thought. Well, so these seeds were planted, and I followed him on Facebook, and then he would share things from time to time from the Free Thought Project. And so then I would follow them. And although I still was really not that into it, I was seeing the things that they were saying. I was like, yeah, this makes so much sense, and it especially got to me when they would post one of their memes that was like, if you think da 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 instead of da 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 da, then you might be a hypocrite. Or when they're like, here's an idea for you to ignore. And so those things, they made me think. And then at one point I got on Twitter, I was following Matt Agaris from the Free Thought Project. And then it was recommended that I followed Sal Mayweather. And then that was it. It was game over. I found I found Empress's account right around the same time that she was creating the account on Insta. And
follow her?
yeah. And that was it. It was game over. I was like, burn it down. And I tried to make memes.
Go ahead.
Oh, just, I mean, some are okay and some really suck, but I'm just like, I just keep chipping away and hoping that maybe it will make some kind of a difference, in the movement, or make somebody laugh or make a good point like the Free Thought Project did, or like Sal's memes,
The meme lord.
The meme lord, yeah.
Yep.
Did you skip your minarchy phase?
Kind of, yeah. Because I was just sort of ambivalent, and sort of not really into it. And then, although I had these thoughts along the way, nothing really came together for me. And then it was like, once I found his account, that was it.
So I thought we would just get started with like everybody's thoughts on just the best path to liberty. I know it differs. Some people think, some sort of violent revolution. There's like agorism, and there's the Mises Caucus. And I just thought we don't have to go around the table or anything like that. You could just chime in with whatever thoughts you might have on the subject.
Okay.
So, what do you guys think?
Okay, I'll go
I guess
first. Because...
okay.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, I know with a lot of anarchists, they give the LP a lot of crap because it's like, like voting is violence or whatever. And I'm just like not one of those anarchists who thinks that. I'm kind of like more like with Spooner, like people do it as a self-defense. Of course, if you're voting for people who are going to try to control, people's lives, that's like unethical in my opinion. But like for me, like, and most people, if they want some kind of change, they're going to be paying attention to the political system. So as much as I don't think the LP is necessarily going to make a lot of changes themselves, I think that it is a good way to communicate like the libertarian philosophy. So I think putting people like the Mises Caucus, like putting people like Jacob Hornberger out there who will actually like, be philosophically sound and like make sense and not like back down or anything on like, stupid things like bake the cake and stuff like that. Like I think, having people out there and like obviously, people who like, I don't know, just like, yes, like if the Mises Caucus is out there putting out like just like hardcore libertarians, I think that's like a great way for people to like learn about the philosophy because a lot of people don't even know like what a libertarian is. They just think it's a Republican who smokes weed or whatever. So I think it's just a good way because if we're gonna need to like, if we actually want change, we do have to change people's minds. And in order to do that, you have to at least introduce them to the philosophy. And then I just think that's like a really great way to do it. I don't think the party itself is going to actually make the changes, but I think it's a good way to start the conversation.
Agreed. Yeah, soft handoff.
I totally agree with that. I have like a completely other thing to add because I kind of get on my soapbox about it on my Instagram stories and in DMs. I haven't really made any, I've made a couple videos about it, but for me, I genuinely believe that even for anarchists, whether it's a statist, an anarchist, libertarian, like people need to get into some emotional healing and consciousness because if you just look at like any random video of a statist freaking out about the political world, and like, yes, there's reason to be angry, even if you have a terrible solution and you think it's great. But like what I found after making videos, I didn't really get into any of this until a few years ago. And when I think back on the original videos I made, like I'm so angry and I'm so filled with rage. And like, yeah, okay, cool. Like innocent people are dying. Yes, there's reason to be angry. But when I kind of got deeper into like where my emotions were coming from, a lot of it had nothing to do with the external world. Like this was my childhood. This was my family life. And I find talking to a lot of anarchists and activists, like the people who are the loudest often have some sort of conditioning in their younger years that led them to like really feel a need to stand up for the innocent, a strong need to be heard. And I think that's amazing and it's beautiful, but we can have all of the external mechanisms for freedom, but if people are still caught in emotions, and I'm speaking from experience, like I don't want to talk like I'm preaching because like this has been my lesson for years and years now. Like if you're still caught in reactive emotions, like you're gonna fall victim to other things and you're not gonna be free. So it's a really uphill battle, but I think it's really essential for the long-term survival of freedom. Like we could have it tomorrow, the government could collapse, but like if people are still raging, I think there's a good chance we're going to wind up back with statism.
Well, it's unproductive. Yeah, it's unproductive energy. You're just ranting, and that's great. But what are you doing with it?
Right, and you're not bringing people to your side when you're doing that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I still struggle with is in conversations with people. Like I find myself getting really, really agitated about it, and I know I'm like, this is so dumb. This is not helping the cause at all.
Right. That's actually one of the subjects that I wanted to bring up was like that angry side of the conversation and why that's like a deterrent to a lot of the newcomers. When people just look like they want to label us as like, kind of extreme and out there because we seem like we are, but we've just shaken that conditioning from before for whatever reason. And change doesn't come unless you're uncomfortable. So if people are still comfortable, they're not willing to even listen. They're okay with their system. They're not hurt by it, and there's that whole like adage like, well, it doesn't affect me. And then everybody says yet until it affects you
Right.
know. Well, I don't
Right.
care because it doesn't affect me. Yeah. And so to get those conversations started with those people who are still comfortable, you know, you don't necessarily want to be confrontational, and you can't be angry because they're like, why are you so mad about it if you're right? You know?
Right.
And you're like, because there's so many bad things, but people also don't like bad things and they don't want to be uncomfortable. And cognitive dissonance is a real thing in multiple areas, not just
Mhm.
politically and, you know, societally. And so how do you have to like literally meet everybody where they're at. It's kind of hard to just have a
Mhm.
like one way that you can talk to somebody. Like you have to know that person to bridge these kinds of topics sometimes, and like
Oh, I
what they
think
can
so
handle
too.
and can't handle. Yeah. And like feed them, you know, like baby spoon them, or there might be that one person that you can like spam with all of your crazy memes. And they're like, wow, oh my gosh. Yeah. But see, I also learned that because, like I said, I came from the conspiracy side. So, you know, broaching certain topics with some people, you're like, yeah, we're never going to have that conversation. But other people, you're like, you need to know. And this is real world daily effects for people. And that's part of it, you know? So, how do you have those conversations? I guess is my question with in the positive way. Like, how do you bring the positives? Not just like because we know how great the ideologies are, and we see how this could work. But when people are, because I've had conversations actually at the rally with a few, you know, as we call them boomers and buds, but you know, the Karen that's like, "Are you Antifa?" You know, because you have your face mask up, and you're like, "No, I'm buying exhaust pipe, girl. Like, it's fine." But how do you have they're already like on the attack because you're holding a sign that says something they don't like because they're just listening to the one news thing, you know. So like
Right.
how do you know, I kind of got off topic with Karen, but you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say? Like, yeah, it's you for a lot of those it's they don't see a problem. And some of them are almost like a few of them I've talked to, it's almost like they're a little bit of the doomer because they're like, well, it's too big. How do you change it? And you're
Mhm.
like,
Right.
right here, right now, having this conversation with you is the start. Because even my own mom was like, well, what's the answer? What is it? You know, and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, but us having the conversation is the start. And that's my only answer. And that's what we want to try to do.
Absolutely. I get really frustrated with the like policing, and I just
Mhm.
want people to immediately meet me where I am, which is pretty radical. And I know that some people they don't even want to believe that some cops are bad, but like with my aunt, she was that way. It was like, well, you know, they're just trying to do their job the best they can with the tools that they have. And it took actually getting her into various like cases like where the police railroaded a suspect and they did like whole podcasts on it, and then finally she would see like, oh wow, there are some that are kind of corrupt. So some people it takes a little bit longer than, you know, where we just it had one moment and it clicked, but it's worth taking that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, that's a big one. Law enforcement is a big one for people. They do not want to believe that the people that they put literally their lives in their hands could abuse them and flip on them at like any moment.
Right.
Well, if you think about it too, like
And
a lot of people are raised that way to where you look up to them and they're heroic and they're here to save you. I mean,
Correct.
whether it be in school or your parents or your family. I mean, so it's kind of hard to shake that when you've been taught that your entire life,
Yeah,
right.
they're
Absolutely.
you
yeah,
know?
automatic respect. They're granted no matter what.
Exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
Unquestionable. Yeah, you're not allowed to question it.
And the propaganda is everywhere. You know, it is
Yeah.
Everywhere.
everywhere,
Yep.
and you don't
Yes.
see it until you see it. You know what I mean? And then it's
Mhm.
like, oh my God, you know, you can't watch a television show or whatever where the cops and the military aren't being glorified.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
So it's really the conditioning is so deep.
Yeah.
My town was voted most patriotic by like Reader's Digest.
Oh
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah, we have so many parades and like our veterans like we'll carry them in on our shoulders and stuff. It's nuts.
Oh.
So here it is in very heavy like on our police department is garbage for multiple reasons, not just the fact that they're law enforcement. And
Many in Arizona are.
yeah. Oh, it's yeah, and
Right.
it's bad. And so, but you still can't like they're die hard. You can't speak ill of them. Them or the military, you just can't. So, and per my profession, I really can't. But I've had really good conversations with officers and detectives, and I've gotten them to admit themselves, like, it's just a job. Well, you're in a place literally to like save lives and protect people, and you choose it's just a job. Like, that's awful. That's even worse than like being an asshole sometimes, excuse my language. But
Yeah.
and like being lazy, go stock shelves at Walmart, especially as like a detective of person crimes. That's one of the facets of law enforcement that I tiny hang on to, and I know I'm in the field, but solving crimes where people are truly hurt by people, because obviously we all know people do evil crap to each other all the time. And, these are women, children, elderly people who are hurt, and you can't be bothered to get out of bed because it's your day off. Like, ridiculous. So, it, that was a tangent. But I get heated about law enforcement because I see it and I work alongside them, and I'm like, you need to do better, because people do depend on you. Like, you literally have blood on your hands, not because you directly killed somebody, which we have that. We have so many police shootings in our town for what our population size, we shouldn't. And because you didn't do due diligence on that first case, now that child is dead, and like, because you didn't do that here, this child is still abused, or this person was sexually assaulted, or this woman continues to be beaten. And it's literally because you don't want to do the paperwork. Like, that's almost as worse as, hitting her yourself. When you're literally supposed to protect her, people go to you to protect them. So, and actually some of these conversations with people help, get that started. Like, oh, it's just a job for them. They really aren't looking out for you. But those are military's the hardest. No, those are the two. I think those are, like we said, kind of that last vestige to get people to people can hate politicians because they see that pretty easy, but you want people to protect you, make you feel safe, and they really don't.
What are some tools that you guys use to just, like, if somebody's just being like really hard-headed but they're kind of reachable, like, what do you do to like get to them, I guess? And like, for me, I like to recommend books. Like, if I don't know, like, if they're being stubborn, and I just like to have various books for different topics, like the police and the military and the courts and all of those different things.
So I took Larkin Rose's seminar called Candles in the Dark, and it's available online now. He just did his last in-person one, I think forever, but he's making it available online. And something really valuable that I learned there is one, like, just to like preface this, is like, statists are victims of the programming, like, they're not all bad people. They're just like indoctrinated. And so, which is kind of a judgmental way to say it, but like, they've been filled with this belief system. And so a lot of what's covered in this seminar is like asking questions. So you're not telling people what to think, but you're asking them questions about their own morality to show them the inconsistency between their beliefs and the state. And when I have tried it, especially in my personal life, it's worked really well. Like, I was doing this with my sister right after I did the seminar, and she was like, how come you didn't say it this way before? Why not? Because I didn't know. I had to learn. But I find that asking questions, because most people, they can see, like, okay, if I don't have the right to kill or steal, then how do I delegate that right to someone else? A lot of people can see that you can't. And of course, like, they're going to be people who are like, oh no, violence is okay to get what you want. And at that point, I'm out, like, okay, we're done. I'm not, somebody else can work with you. I'm not doing it anymore. But yeah, because people, and I'm not going to obviously collectivize, but a lot of people are good and they're confused, and it's not their fault. So also, what's worked really well for me is, before I leave any comments, I do like an edit for meanness, and I cut out like all my sassiness, because it tends to just like flow. So like, before I hit post, I'm like, I don't really need that. Okay, fine. Like, and that's worked pretty well for me.
Yeah, we talked about that, because that's one of the strategies I use in counseling. Like, I know what you need, but you need to figure out what you need.
Yeah.
And that's, asking questions is usually how I do it too. Because then it's not so much like I'm telling you what, you've come to that conclusion yourself.
Yeah, and I think if you're talking about like a specific issue, like, I was just reading a book by Harry Brown, and he like made a good point. Yeah, he made like a good point that was like, okay, so if you're talking to somebody just about like a specific issue, you can't just like start by telling them they're like morally wrong, because they're just gonna like they're just gonna be like, no, that's not that's not true. Like, I'm a good person. I'm not being immoral. And so like, if you take like I don't know, like abortion, for example, and like somebody who's anti-abortion. And I think there are great arguments on both sides. But like if you take someone who's anti-abortion and thinks the state should like, you know, control like who can get an abortion or who can't or whatever, just be like, okay, so yeah, I agree, abortion is wrong. But do you think the state is the best to like try to limit abortions? Like you've seen their war on drugs, you've seen the war on terror, you've seen, the war on poverty, and like it obviously hasn't changed any of these things. So what makes you think a war on abortion would actually like lessen abortion? And so I think you have to like get on their level and then like make a point to try to agree with them at some point, get on their level, and then from there you can kind of like give them a utilitarian aspect of it, and then like eventually once they see that, it's like easier to, I think, to bring up like the moral aspect of it.
Yeah. That's a good point to make, actually, because I know, like, if somebody tells me, oh, you're morally wrong, I'm instantly going to shut down and get a little bit mad,
Right.
probably.
Exactly.
Well,
And then I think like social.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like, and then social media, like it's got its ups and downs. Like if you're having a conversation with somebody in person, it's a lot easier to just like be civil about it and just like have a good conversation.
Yes.
Where on social media, obviously you're just like, okay, I don't know you, I'm just gonna tell you how stupid you are. But then there's also a positive side to social media, like what you were saying, Carrie. Like I'll start by just like typing like the most like, okay, you are so dumb, how can you believe this? Like blah blah blah, just like so angry. And then I'm just like, okay, I need to change this, take this out, and like it makes it easier to like think about, just take a breath. All right, here's a more like, carefully constructed argument, so I don't like, I'm not trying to talk down to you, even though I think you're completely wrong. So there's ups and downs, I think, with social media for sure.
And the cool thing too is that other people see that. So like you're not just engaging with the person who's being rude or like being really hard-headed. Like who knows how many people are reading the comments quietly, not liking anything and not commenting, but they're just taking it all in. So like I don't see any downside to like being civil. It's taken me a while to learn this, but I've arrived here and I'm staying.
100%. Well, that was me. I was a lurker forever. Then I got involved, but before I just read what.
Yeah, and like I'll have conversations with people like strangers like on social media, and like I'm not gonna change their mind. They're like, there's nothing about it. But then I'll get like DMs from people like from like high school who I haven't talked to in years, and they'll just be like, hey, just want to let you know I've been like reading your posts, and they're like, it's nice to see a different perspective. And I'm just like, okay, this is awesome. Like this just gives me more reason to like keep doing it. Yeah, I love it. It's like, okay. Because there's so many times where you're just in arguments and it's just completely like, it's like, oh, I just feel so hopeless sometimes. But then you get like messages like that. It's like, oh, that's so great. Like, thank you so much. Like, I'm glad somebody's getting something out of it, even if it's like, not very many. I don't know.
You just really never know who's listening. I know like there will be people who I don't really recognize their username, and they'll reach out and they're like, you've totally changed my perspective on this. And I'm like, it makes me so thankful that I can actually, like sometimes I have hot button issues where I just want to be like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, stop talking. But then I'm like, that's not going to do any good. So I will like kindly explain it. And that, I think that reaches the kind of people I want to reach.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Allie, did you have something?
Yeah, no, what I was going to say before is it kind of depends too on where people are coming from originally. So like if you're dealing with somebody who's more on the left versus the right, I mean, you can argue about a spectrum all you want, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're going to be coming from a different place. And if somebody's more emotional, you kind of have to hit them with that. Whereas somebody who wants to take in the facts, providing them with that information might turn them towards or be sympathetic towards your ideology or your ideas, right?
Absolutely.
So that was my thinking. It just depends on where people are coming from too, and acknowledging that and trying to get them where they're at and bring them to your side,
Absolutely. There have been a couple times on Twitter I've seen, I know specifically Jared from Biting the Bullet, he's been like atrocious to a person and they're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I'm like, wait,
Wow.
that was awful. all of my walls would have been up at that point. Maybe some people do need belligerently brought on to liberty.
Anti-state told me that at one point, because I was kind of worried. I rude to somebody, and I was like, I really need to reconsider this. It's really not how, it's not the approach that I want to take. And he was like, some people need that.
Yeah, and I go back and forth because, like, when I'm really feeling something in a video, like, I need to get it out, and it's gonna come out how it comes out. Like, I'm not as mean as I used to be. But I had one Patreon supporter who he messaged me like when he pledged to me on Patreon, and he was like, when I first saw your videos, I was like, who does this bitch think she is? And then he was like, but I kept watching, and I realized you made a lot of sense. So like, I don't know, because for me, it's like I do have that side of me that can get really rowdy and like really, really worked up about it. And some people like that. Like, sure, that gives comfort to people who are frustrated and they feel alone. Like, it's nice to see someone who's speaking up and being loud about it. But I still don't know. I'm trying to find the right balance between expressing myself authentically and also like being mindful of communication. And maybe it changes from day to day. Like, I don't have it figured out, but I think I feel better about it when I'm calm. Like, internally, I feel more at peace. Yeah.
Well, I think it would depend on your platform because, like you said, with your videos, there's a specific subject, and you feel a certain way, and so you're going to project it that way, and it's going to come out how it wants. But in those, specific conversations,
Right.
you want to keep it a little more civil, I guess.
Yeah.
But not always, because some people do like that argumentative banter, and then later they're like, "Thank you, like you got me thinking," and you have to be able to thrive in different conversations like that, whether it's confrontation. I don't like the word confrontation. I'm looking for clarification.
Yeah.
I'm trying to clarify what I'm saying, what you're saying. I'm not trying to confront you and tell you you're wrong or I'm right. But.
My hot button issues that I've realized is like Ross Ulbricht. The second somebody's like, well, what about his murder for hires? I just instantly I'm like, oh, you dumb brainwashed idiot who believes everything the government says. And then I'm like, wait, that is not going to get somebody to sign his petition.
Right.
That's that think it, don't say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it took a while to get to that point.
Right.
Yeah. I have data. I tattooed "do unto others" on my wrist for easy reading, and it's for myself, not for others. Because I could be pretty judgy and quick to opinion, and I learned to keep your mouth shut. Because you don't know what somebody's going through, where somebody's at. That's my counseling, blah blah blah. But you do have to know. Like I said, when you have to meet people where they're at when you broach certain subjects,
Right.
That goes for yourself. I guess maybe don't breach certain topics when you're in a certain mood. I mean, that does work for us ladies too, because I know that I hate to sound cliche, but I get hormonal and I know there's more sensitive.
Oh my gosh, me too.
And I have to consciously choose not to make like important decisions during certain times, and I'm gonna sleep on this and think it through before I send that email. So conversations are the same. Yeah.
So one of my friends, John Osterhill, I don't know if I said his last name right, but he does like the videos for Soho Forum for like Reason. He said to me one time, he asked if is anarchy about being free or is it about being anti-state? One certainly begets the other, but in the meantime it matters. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about that. I know like with Allie and she like is cool with like the Mises Caucus, and for myself I struggle with like prosecutor elections. Like I don't know if you guys know who Larry Krasner is, but he's like a DA in Philadelphia, and he's made like this huge difference. I mean, he's exonerated like 12 people. It's like 35,000 supervision hours that he's cut back on, like people on probation and parole, and like thousands of years of imprisonment that he's like cut back on. And to me that seems like something that's really important. If we got libertarians in those positions, it seems like it would alleviate a lot of pain for people now, whereas it might not be the most anarchist thing to do. And I wanted to know what your guys' takes on those various instances where that might apply.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a big fan of just allying with people who have at least want to go in the direction that I want to, knowing that, I'll probably go further than you, but I'm okay with allying with like the Mises Caucus because they're very big on like decentralization and trying to get things more local as opposed to, just moving in a better direction for me, I think is a good thing. I know I get shit for it online all the time, but but and I like the whole, I think it's the train analogy where it's like you can work with like minarchists and people locally, and then as soon as they get to their stop, you just keep going and they get off, right? So that's my position on that. So
Well, I work with like county attorneys, prosecutors, and stuff like that, and I will say that oftentimes they go like there's no running mate. It's usually just them. That's why they get voted in.
94% of the time.
See, I don't even have statistics. That's crazy. I just see it. Yeah, and so if you could get those people, I could see that being, as much as I hate the system, it still exists, and working inside it, you have to in some levels. And my dad told me early on, like, it's a lot easier to screw the system from the inside than to headbutt it on occasion. And so that's one way to do it. If you can get those kinds of people to get enough, that's actually not a bad idea.
That's just like, that's one really big place that I've always just really struggled with, because the power, they just have so much power. And it's one position where, and just looking at like Larry Krasner, if you go to his website at the top, there's like a ticker of the amount of hours or years that he's just kept people out of the system. And it's just one person has done this. And it's like, if most of these people go unopposed, why aren't we in that space?
Yeah. No, that's a good avenue. Yeah. I would have not thought of that.
And I think there is like a benefit to using the system. So like, for example, especially locally. So like my husband is on the plan commission in our city, and it's like not like, it's just like a volunteer position, but sometimes he'll be the only, like a business will come and be like, hey, I want to do this on my own property. Can you please, give me permission to do it? And my husband will just be like, convince everybody that, yeah, okay, whatever, obviously they can do whatever they want with their property, and like say in a way where it's like, makes sense to them. But there's a lot of times, like if he wasn't on that commission, there's a lot of times where they would just be like, oh no, you can't do that because we don't like, we don't like the way that looks or whatever. And it's like, so what? This person can't do what they want on their own property just because a few people don't like it or whatever. And so it's like, even like with a super local, like smaller position, I think it's good to just like get in there and like even just like opening minds a little bit and just being like, okay, this person can do whatever they want on their own property. Something as simple as that.
Agreed. Yeah. Because that avenue exists, and that's a platform that people are going to look to for that kind of information. Yeah. And you need to be in there because people will get railroaded and just take the status quo.
Exactly.
I think one position that I saw, maybe Todd, he dropped out of the race for Libertarian chair, and that was like the school board leader or whatever it's called. School board president or something like that. I think, I don't really know how much power they have or anything like that, but it seems like it can't hurt to at least drop in on those meetings, have a voice.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've seen those small changes even locally when you hear certain things are happening, and then locals will go to the city council meeting, and just sitting there and having a presence will make a change on how they vote. And as much as I've been an anarchist, I have always told people that your local vote counts because I've seen it like work, especially when it comes to like your county attorney and stuff like that. So paying attention to those things and trying to get people in those places is a good idea.
Well, and locally is where you're going to find the most change or see the most change in your own life.
Yes.
And if you can move towards a positive, towards, in anybody's life at this time, because you have to kind of be realistic, right? In what's going on. And if you can do something positive in someone's life by having, these people, I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily bad,
Right.
Yeah, it's like fun. Oh no, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I do this every time. Yeah, I think it feels good to be black and white, like to know where you stand morally and on principle. But the older I get, I do find there's some gray area. And like, just 2 examples, like there was a guy here in, I think, LA, who did, I think this was a libertarian, and he did some great work getting rid of red light tickets, like where there would be cameras and they would just like take pictures of you and then fine you. And then there's a guy, I want to say his name's Connor Boyack. I could be wrong, but somewhere in, I think in Colorado or Utah, he like got legislation through to stop the state from stopping kids from having lemonade stands without permits, like, so now kids can do that. And like, that's not something I really care to do. I don't really want to wade through government. I'd rather, be free of it altogether. But I think people can do some really awesome things that actually maximize freedom.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, and even through the judicial system, there's other ways you can help on that local level. Like, please do jury duty.
Yes.
Like I know everybody like literally is from birth taught how to get out of it, but there's 2 sides to the coin. Like there are innocent people sitting in jail who need to be given their trial, and then there are victims who are suffering and not getting the closure that they need because we can't get jurors, especially in rural areas.
If you think that jury duty is stupid, you should listen to episode 373 of Free Man Beyond the Wall with Slappy Jones from the Rollo and Slappy Show. He was on a jury and he did like some extremely amazing things. So listen to that episode, and if you're still against jury duty, you have no heart. No, I'm just kidding. We just talked we just said don't do that. Just listen to the episode. It's really good.
I agree. I will definitely vouch for that. It was a great episode. I had listened to the one that he did before, like on the Rollo and Slappy show. And then I listened to the most recent one with Pete, and it was, it's powerful. They made a big difference in people's lives, and he battled really, really hard to make that happen. And back to all the points that you guys are making about what the differences that can be made on, a local level, or in saving people from going to prison or things like that. I think, how could you argue against it? You know what I mean? Like, I struggle because part of me is like, well, I don't participate in the system. Like, I'm not going, but realistically, if you have a chance to, make things better and reduce harm, then I think that makes a little more sense. And just like others have said, like, work as much as you can with others that are willing to work with you, and you may also change hearts and minds along the way. And how could you say that that's a bad thing? Or just like in the political system, like with the Libertarian Party, that I know it's a really, really hot topic, but look at how many people did Ron Paul change? It makes such a huge difference. And yes, voting, and of course I know that, but that man made a difference. It was a huge difference, and he was somebody who was, dealing in the political parties.
I think that anybody who runs, they have to know that if they even get close, they're going to change the rules. Like the system, I guess they're going to change the rules. If you run with the hope of just changing people's minds, like someone like Ron Paul did, I'm not going to hate you for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just planting that seed is good, because the next time they see it again, they'll be like, oh, because you aren't the only source.
And I certainly, before, I thought, like, no, there's no way I would participate in jury duty. I mean, that completely changed my mind. And I was like, if I have an opportunity to do it, and I have an opportunity to help somebody out, especially if it's something ridiculous like for drugs, I would try to do what I could do. Of course, I would be nervous because I don't think that I am at the point where I'm in a good position to make those arguments without getting, fired up and things like that. But it's a goal of mine to get where a lot of you already are, to be able to, to ask the questions and sort of help people get there in a more positive way.
Absolutely. Who are some ladies in the liberty movement that have inspired you?
I will say, Carrie, your videos, when I first
Aw.
started going like towards like the anarchy side, like your videos would pop up on YouTube, and I'm like, yeah, this girl's making sense. So I've
Aw,
been watching
thank
your videos
you.
for a while.
That's
Yeah.
all I ever wanted. Thank you.
For sure.
Nothing makes me happier. And for me, since I was mentioned, there's a woman named Angela Keaton, and she's awesome.
Love her.
Yeah, she still runs antiwar.com, I think. I'm not exactly sure what her role is, but I think it was like 2013 or so, she said something to me that made so much sense, because I was like already identifying as an anarchist, I guess, but I came from a leftist background, and I was trying to like wade through feminism. And obviously the Democratic Party and the left, they've sort of taken up that mantle. Like Republicans don't really go on about like how they care about women's rights and whatnot, like, and like humanizing women. But what she said, that like, I've made this point in other videos, and I always credit her because like she's the reason I thought it. But or I don't know if I've made it in videos, but in conversation, it's like I always credit her, because she said that basically what the Democratic Party does is like they reduce women to their body parts and then call it empowerment. Like everything becomes birth control, and like I'm a terrible woman. What's it called? Maternity leave? Yeah, that's what it's called. Like, oh my God, like everything, or abortion, like everything becomes like they're literally just objectified, and then they call that we're helping women. And to me, it's so sexist, and that like really framed my view on feminism, because obviously I care about women. Like I care about empowering women, but the way that she framed it, and the way. And what's so cool too is, I should stop myself, is like that's not the only thing she's inspired me about. Like she's a very articulate, strong woman, and she's an anti-war activist, and that's how I got started. Like my main issue was always war. So Angela is awesome. If you don't know who she is, you should definitely look her up. And Mary Ruwart is really cool too. I follow her on Instagram, and I found her through you, Lady Voluntary. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
She's like everything that I want to be. Like she's so kind, and she's articulate, and she's just incredible. And then Lynn Ulrich.
Yeah.
Sorry. She just works so hard. I don't know that she's libertarian, but she's definitely prominent in the libertarian community for the work that she does. She's such a strong, wonderful woman, and she definitely deserves all the praise.
Another lady that I really like is Monica Perez. I know she's kind of been are popping up a lot more in podcasts and stuff recently, and I originally heard her on Pete Quinones' show, and I really liked her a lot, and I try to now to all of her work. And she was on Part of the Problem with Dave Smith recently, and she's just a really intelligent lady and has a lot of good things to say, I think. So I really like
her a lot.
Yeah.
I was gonna say too, I think Kennedy, she on Fox Business, like she's like kind of a vanilla libertarian, but I think she's a great gateway to like the philosophy in general. And if you want to look at like anarchists, like old school anarchists, like Emma Goldman, she's anti-capitalist, but she's like badass and just like anti-state and just like a good spokesperson for anarchy.
Caitlin Johnson's the same way. She's anti-capitalist, but she has such amazing anti-war takes that I power through the other stuff.
Same. There's so many more women in this community now than there were a few years ago. Like, it's so exciting to see, and it feels so good. Like, especially like when you go to these conferences, like I just gravitate towards the women, because like I love men, cool, and like there's no shortage of men in this movement, but it's so cool just to have like a little bit more feminine energy. I'm really grateful for that. And I think there's a lot to be said for like adding a little more compassion, and men can be compassionate too. But I just love having this little community of ladies. So thanks to all of you. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, same.
Same.
I would agree. Yeah, and most of us in this are more compassionate, in my opinion. So.
And I can be like really not compassionate too. So I'm not trying to make this like a gender thing. Like I can be quite cold and like F you, but It's just nice to have. In my real life, my girlfriends are really important to me, and it's nice to have them in this community too.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it was BR
Completely,
called me
yeah.
a compassionate asshole.
Yeah.
So I took that as a compliment. But we are few and far between, and for various reasons. And sometimes it's hard to have conversations. I mean, even like somebody legit thought I was a catfishing as a gentleman.
Oh god.
Until they heard me on the last episode. And so why would I go to that kind of effort? And it's kind of silly like that. But even for, there's a certain, like, we've organized and other things for like the two-way rallies and stuff, and like Snapchat was one of those avenues. And I joined my local one, and a lot of them are young. But they like there's a joke in the Boogaloo community about toes and a toe feet pics, as I'm sure some of you are aware. And they legitimately wanted toe pics because they thought, one, I was a fed, and then two, I wasn't a female. And they were just so distrustful. Like I almost got voted off the island. Like they're gonna shut down the whole chat because a female came in to talk. I'm here to help. Make sure you guys eat. And
I did recently hear that it was an actual rumor that feds didn't have toes.
Oh my god!
Wow.
I thought that was
What did they
really
have?
interesting.
Hooves?
Okay, so I think a good thing to talk about is what are your guys' thoughts on the so-called Boogaloo?
Mm.
I mean,
I don't want it to happen.
I'm like staunchly in the camp that thinks it's like, if it's taken further, like if you think it's any more than just a meme, like please don't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a meme.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's been a lot of violent revolutions throughout history, and we still have like rampant statism. So I appreciate the idea, and I'm glad a lot of anarchists like would be willing to put their lives on the line in that sense. But I'm not sure that like some of them, I won't say all, I don't want to collectivize, but I think some people haven't really thought it through. And like just to bring it back to what I was talking about earlier about like emotional awareness and consciousness, like without that, like you can kill all the feds you want, like you're going to end up with a government again.
I like the concept just of the discontent. Like that's what drew me to it, And then, like I said, I do have a lot of friends who are in the gun community, so obviously that's big there. With, but for me, it was just that, like, oh, all of these people also realize that like this isn't okay, and there are other peaceful options that we can explore first. And like, I want to say it was Seaburn Book Boy on a recent podcast who had said, like, when everybody says, well, there's never been a peaceful alternative, or right. So why don't we try to do that? If it's always been violent,
yeah,
like let's be the first. Like America is kind of a pioneer. Why can't we try it that way? Why can't we just subvert the state instead of trying to hang people? I mean, I know I'm the worst offender. Like girls love guillotines. Like I love my shit and I love my memes, and I love just that culture of humor, but it does bring people awareness. And I mean, even my mom brought up the Boogaloo because it hit mainstream. And it's just an avenue for conversation for me. And I do believe in your Second Amendment rights and things like that, but no, like please let's not go to violent revolution. Like I do like to still, order pizza online and go to the grocery store and not have to wait in ration lines. And I think a lot of the people who come across bloodthirsty are young, like they don't really know what that feels like, because like true combat vets and stuff, they know, they're like, we don't want.
I think that goes into, first, I think the way the government operates is death by 1,000 cuts. Like there's never going to be a line that they cross to where everybody collectively thinks, let's go to war. Like they just,
right.
Yeah.
But there's this in the liberty community, and probably just in general all across every community, there's like a crisis in belonging. They see these memes, they see this community, and that's like a place to belong.
Right. Well, oftentimes if you're leaning towards something like that, you are a little bit of a loner, because you try to fit in with people and you don't, they rub you the wrong way, or you can't have the conversations you want to have, or like you said before, Carrie, like you're emotionally not in a place to like have those conversations with those people in a healthy way, and so you kind of withdraw and do your own thing, and then like follow the pages you want and research the information you want, so you're kind of in an echo chamber. And then this way it helps you, though, that if you can have those conversations with those people.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And I definitely am, I do not want the bug to happen. I think that even though we definitely, if everybody who owned a gun, if everyone got together, I think that the people would win, but I don't think that some people are considering the actual cost, and not just to them, because I think some people are like, I'll die. It's like, yeah, but what about, your family? What about your dogs? What about your home? What about people and, and animals that you care about, and a way of life? Like, what about those things? And the thing is like, it wouldn't be over. It's not like it's going to be over in a month. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Vietnam. We're looking at decades of the battle.
Absolutely.
And they're not going down easy. We know that, and there is a lot of conversations about asymmetric warfare, and wouldn't it be the most asymmetric if people came together to communicate and actively starve the state of their income and actively print guns, and what if we have some like a 3D coalition, and every time they make a law, we release 1,000 3D printed guns into the wild or something, just to battle against that. But I just think that you really have to understand that it would be devastating. There are some people that think that the South still to this day hasn't recovered, and I think there are a lot of indicators that that's true from the Civil War.
Right.
So it's not like this is just gonna be some easy. It would be a terrible, terrible, terrible cost. And the other thing is that, like we have already said in this conversation, it's not like just all of a sudden everyone's going to be an anarchist. Everyone's going to agree with you. So even if you did defeat them, there are still going to be other people that think that they need a government. So I just think that it is an absolute last resort.
Well, because the aftermath's not just going to be all violent either. You're going to lose supply chains. You're going to lose medical supplies. Like, how many people are dependent upon medications?
Right.
And that's going to stop, and that's going to affect people, and people are going to die. Utilities. I live in a region where you will die without air conditioning. So if your power goes out, people don't think of like infrastructure all the time.
Right.
And how it would affect that. Yeah.
Most of the questions from Twitter are just trolls. Like, I should have known.
What else is new?
Okay, I guess. What are some book recommendations, I guess? That's a good question.
Recently, I think a really important book, it's a simple read, is Mary Sabrin's, hang on a second, let me grab it. I can't remember the title.
That's okay.
Why the Federal Reserve Sucks.
Sounds good.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it was really interesting, and I think it was an easy one, and I think you can kind of recommend it to a lot of other people who might not necessarily be in the liberty movement, and yeah. So that one, I'll go with that one.
Carrie?
No Treason, Constitution of Authority, Lysander Spooner. I love it. And it's funny too. Like, even though it was written in the 19th century, he's like kind of snarky about it, like it's a fun read, and it's a short
Love
too,
it.
and it's really hard to argue with the logic he presents. So 11 out of 10 recommend.
For myself, I guess it's not really a libertarian oriented book, but it's called Blood in the Water, and it's about the uprising at Attica prison. I guess I never realized like all that happened, but if you want to point somebody to a book that just shows the system for what it is, that's just it's an amazing work. Like totally recommend it. I can't remember the author's name. I'm really sorry. Lady Voluntary?
Uh, I will say probably I think the best one to just like get into it, like the anarchy aspect, would be Rothbard's Enemy of the State. It's easy, it's quick, it's short. You can listen to it in like an hour, and it just like gets right to the point, and it just like major red pill moment for me. So I would say that.
Buckles?
I actually am not super well read on many like anarchist libertarian books. But one of my favorite books that does kind of deal with a small bit of government and things, it's called Killers of the Flower Moon. And I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but it's about the Osage tribe, the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. And it's about the formation of the FBI and how the deaths of these Native women caused the formation of the FBI, because I'm actually an Osage Native, card carrying, thank you. And we had gotten mineral rights. We had struck oil on our reservation, and so all these white men were marrying Native women, and they came up murdered.
Whoa.
And they're actually making
Jeez.
a movie, so it'll be a movie by Martin Scorsese, and I think
Ooh.
Leonardo DiCaprio will be in it. But
Oh man,
that's my book recommendation.
sounds like one to grab.
For sure.
And Ashley.
So I'm also not super duper well read. I'm working on it, but I definitely think that In the Fed by Ron Paul is a really good one. I think that
Yes.
for people to be able to just get a basic understanding of like your wealth, your money that you work so hard for is actively being stolen from you. And you don't even know it. And there is no oversight. There is no auditing of this process. What is happening? Like this, I believe, is so important. And the people need to understand that your money isn't worth anything. Like it's a real problem. And for me, it is one of the major things that I think about because, we have these conversations about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and maximalism and, all of these different questions and gold and coin and things like that. And I really think that you can meet people on an I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but basically you can get people to really think of how it actually is affecting them. It's actively affecting them, even though they don't realize it. So I think that is a really good book to be able to talk with people about and to be able to have them understand that even if you don't care about all the other stuff, about the injustices, about police, about the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, at least you care about your money, right?
Right.
And so I feel like that is something that's really important for people to wake up to is the Fed. Like, what is happening? And I don't think anybody knows. It's some nefarious operation. And there is no oversight. There is no transparency for the regular person and probably not even Congress, I mean, it's like, really, we all should be asking this question. What the fuck is going on here?
I like the asking questions, though. You're right there, Ashley, because I even recommend that. Like, I work for a nonprofit, I run another nonprofit. And when people donate their money to certain places, I always recommend that they ask what you're going to do with my money. Like, what are you going to do with my
Yes.
money? How are you going to utilize it? Why can't we ask those questions with the money you forcibly took from me?
100%. Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially people need to have transparency in money, and government should be the most transparent thing of all. If it was
100%.
by the people and for the people, then the people would be able to know what's happening,
Yeah. Yeah. No, they always cry national security and that we're too dumb to handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we will not understand.
We won't understand that there's terrorist threats against us because we've destroyed the homeland.
There was a question that I had in my head, but now I guess just like your overall experience in the Liberty community, if you find it positive, just like I guess it's, I don't know, like how you feel just being a woman in the Liberty community.
For me, this is Ashley. I think that for the most part, the biggest difference for me is because I don't feel educated enough. It really isn't about overall men versus women. Like I am really glad, as Carrie had said earlier, that there are women in the community, and I think I do feel maybe more comfortable, like talking a little more in depth about things with them about it, or that kind of thing, or maybe a little more comfortable, like if I had a question that I felt like was a stupid question, you know I think maybe that way I feel a little more comfortable talking with women. But for me, and for the most part, I feel like the difference that I feel is really about my education level in the whole thing, and not necessarily about men versus women. Because I think there's a lot of like really great guys in the Liberty community, and they are very, very respectful. Like the people that I have relationships with in group chats and things like that. But I do feel also, having said that, and I haven't necessarily felt their wrath, but there is a group of males that can sometimes be very, very angry, like more angry at you because you're a female.
I really like the Liberty community. I know so many people find that the libertarian infighting can be exhausting, but there are just so many intelligent, normal people. Like, they're not somebody who has this massive platform like Tom Woods, but they can just recall things like from obscure books and parts of history, and they're just so smart. And I learned so much from them. I really like that.
Right. Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I haven't had any like direct negative. It's all been pretty welcoming, besides like my Snapchat boys. But beyond that, it's been pretty positive. And there's men like that in every aspect. There's
Absolutely.
always men who just don't like, because again, I just had this conversation with BR about mosh pits at punk shows and how there's always that one dude that if there's a chick in the pit, he like seeks her out and like wants to punch her in the face because he thinks he can. So like
Right.
I've had my fair share of black eyes from the pit from that one dude who sought me out because I was a chick in the pit. So if you're a chick in the Liberty community, like somebody might go for you just for that. So
Right.
it happens, unfortunately. But overall, it's been a very welcoming experience, and we are kinder to talk to more often than not to the newbies.
I think there seems to be I think probably as long as Carrie, we both are like 2011, 2012, like Ron Paul people. I definitely have seen more women in the community since like when I first got into it all, which is really nice.
Oh yeah, I've seen such a growth. And I was at Anarchapulco I didn't go this year, but last year, and I gave a speech on like women in the movement. And like half of it was kind of like, okay, dudes, like let's figure out our social skills and whatnot. But also like it was talking about like sociologically, like why there aren't more women in the movement. And I was honestly so surprised because of the women who were there. So many of them came up to me and they weren't even like identifying with what I was saying about libertarians. Like they were like, they identified with the cultural aspect of it. And I was just talking about like how progressives and the left have kind of monopolized female empowerment and whatnot. But like,
Right.
it was awesome to have so many women come up to me and like say that they felt it too. And to that end, as far as like creepy people, like, yeah, but I can't say that I haven't experienced that in other communities as well. Like any community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was funny because there was this one incident also in Acapulco, and like I was on Steemit when crypto was like really surging, and this guy, like he came up to me and he was like, yeah, well, it's easy to do well on Steemit when you're a girl. And like, and in my head, I'm like, people, everyone I know on Steemit who's making like quadruple the income I am is like an old dude. Like, what are you talking? But again, there's going to be people like that anywhere. It's not specific to the Liberty community.
Yeah, I can't say that I've ever had a bad experience with the dudes in the Liberty community. So, I mean, there are a bunch of them in our local like LP here, which I got involved with just to kind of find other people who are Liberty minded. And they're all really cool people. So I can't say that I've had any discrimination or whatever. So
That's really good.
yeah.
I guess we could wrap it up. Just like, what are your hopes for the future? Very broadly. Anyone want to lead the charge?
I'll get it over with.
Bitcoin.
Oh my god, I did it again. I swear. No, you go first. I'm not going first. You go.
All right, I'll just say that I think, or for my hope for the future is that Bitcoin just like blasts off, so I become a Bitcoin billionaire.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
Agreed.
Are you gonna say Carrie?
I was waiting until I was called upon because I didn't want to jinx it. Yeah, so what I'm going to say is like why people call me like a stupid California hippie, and I managed to fit 2 likes into that sentence because I'm a Valley girl. But I realized, I don't know, a few years ago, my biggest issue was always peace. I was very anti-war. And I realized a few years ago, I just want peace in the world and I want it for myself. And my hope for everyone is that we can get that, because like I can go on and on and on about peace and like not using violence to get what you want, but like a lot of the time I wasn't at peace in my own life, so like I think it all goes hand in hand, and I would love for like humanity to find peace, not just not killing each other, but also like finding happiness and like just a way to be in this existence. And obviously I think that aligns very well with the freedom philosophy, but I just want people to be free in all the ways.
Yes. Anyone else?
So I think for me, like I would really like to move more towards like school choice and that type of thing. So we get more kids who are not necessarily brainwashed in the public school system, but moving more towards other types of ways that they're learning. So that would be my hope for the future, because I think that's where it starts, is what you learn and how you're brought up and that whole thing. And I think that's how you can bring more liberty to the world.
Absolutely. Miss Buckles or Ashley, do you have any input, I guess?
So I think that, I guess my hope is to really have a mass awakening, because I think that's one of the things that we've talked about, and I've seen others say it, and Empress, I'm pretty sure that I've seen you say it as well. But once people start waking up, like a lot of people, then we really have a chance at change. We have a chance at all of the other things, at, school of choice, at cryptocurrency, at, starving the state, of working together to actively starve the state of its food, which is our money. And so that's my biggest hope, is to have that sort of time when people are actually waking up and actually coming together and realizing that, oh, wow, we've really been programmed to be divided. I guess divided we fall isn't just some, cliche. Like, it actually means divided we fall. If people were coming together and waking up together and realizing that you're being lied to and that you're being patronized and you're being treated like you can't be responsible for your own life, then we can come together on these changes. That's my hope.
Absolutely. Miss Buckles, do you have anything?
I guess my hope would be for teaching and learning a little bit more like self-sufficiency in several aspects for people, not just like being a farmer. I'm a big fan of that, but even just in terms of information and where you get that, how you find that, because part of the reason for where we're at when it comes to status and stuff is everybody's like, well, there's, the government will take care of that. You always look to some other entity. I'm a huge proponent for be your own first responder. And if more people thought that way, instead of looking directly to call, the cops or to rely on this avenue or, government agency to do X, Y, and Z, find out for yourself, be an advocate for yourself. That's kind of what, I do that in my personal life, my professional life, and then now here in the Liberty community, that's what I'm trying to do is, take care of yourself first so you can help take care of other people, but stop relying on certain things that do no good, really, in the long run.
Okay, one piece of advice for, people, I guess, like, for me, consume less. Everybody just consume less. That's my parting advice.
I like that. Obey, consume.
You guys can all say one piece of advice. If I didn't make that clear. And then I'll just end the podcast at the last person.
Oh no.
I would say if you have kids, maybe whatever you can do, try to homeschool them, or at least if they are in the government school, try to just make sure that they're questioning everything that they're being taught. Because I think the kids are like the future generations are what's going to make all the difference. And I think government's strongest control is through, the education system with the youth. So homeschool if you can.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna keep
to think about it.
I literally waited so long this time before talking.
I was just gonna say you could take a second to think about it, and I can edit out any dead air. So don't feel like you need to rush.
Perfect. I cannot believe I've done this every single time. Okay, I was going to say, I'm going to keep up the hippie thing. Try meditation, or yoga if you're into physical movement. I know that a lot of people will scoff at that, but if we're talking about calm communication and I'm talking about internal peace, even if it's 5 minutes a day, there are free apps. There's one called Insight Timer. It's amazing. They have meditations for beginners. There's a wonderful guy on YouTube. His name's Robert Strock, Strock, and he if you're not knowing how to deal with emotions, oh my gosh, he's amazing. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it can really make a difference in your life. And I think just add some more peace and calm to the environment we're trying to work within.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you. I have to meditate. I don't, for my own well-being. I don't have a choice. I have to do it every day.
Anyone else?
My advice would be to whatever you're doing in this community in terms of is to tailor make it for yourself. So don't look at one person's journey or experience through this and assume that yours has to be that exact way. You don't have to read all the books. You don't have to follow all the right people. You can just do it through those conversations because, corny in itself, comparison is the thief of joy. So when you're sitting there looking at, oh, I didn't do this right. Oh, I haven't read that yet. So I don't know, just keep having the conversations and you can tailor that to your own self because everybody's different, obviously.
I love that.
Yep. Agreed. My advice, I guess, is ask questions. If something cannot stand up to questions, then that is and should be a real red flag. Again, I guess this may be an echo chamber of people that kind of believe and are already asking questions, but I think one of the most important things that people can do is ask questions. Get interested, get curious, have conversations with people that know more than you, and try to pick up the book and try to research and find new information, and don't get super comfortable in what you believe because we have blind spots. There are still people in the Liberty community that I think are really punitive, or maybe even believe in the death penalty or that kind of thing. And I think that it isn't them doing that on purpose, but maybe they haven't continued to ask those questions of themselves and the questions of others. Like, okay, well, we know that we don't trust the state, right? So
Mhm.
why would we trust them to make a decision on someone's life? Like, there's a real opportunity for error here. And so I think that asking questions, and there are a lot of systems, especially in government, that don't want to be asked questions. They do not want transparency. And, people deserve that. So ask questions to work on your own blind spots, and ask questions to challenge the systems in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Love it.
excellent.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it would just be, financially, because nobody's kind of addressed this, but, getting out of debt and that type of thing to set yourself up better and get more into crypto and other currencies, because we all know eventually this will all, fall out. And
House of cards.
so, exactly, and try and set yourself up for a better future through those avenues. In my
That's a really
opinion.
good suggestion.
Yeah.
Very good
For sure.
advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Out of debt. That should just be the main message.
Yes.
Get out of all the debt, and then you don't have to worry about all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't have debt, don't get into it. If
Don't.
No,
you,
exactly.
if
Get
you're
it.
young, consider college might not be the best option.
No.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of trade schools.
Hmm.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
trying to push them lately to, get that out there, because a lot of high schools, unfortunately, they push that you have to go to college, and it's like that's not the only option. So,
No.
Right.
Yeah, learn a skill.
yeah. They probably make more than most college majors, just saying.
Guaranteed. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, how
Exactly.
many business majors are out here like, well, that was worthless. I mean,
Yeah. Waste of time.
yeah, as a
Fair.
business major, I can tell you, yes, it was, I've questioned that decision many times.
The poli-sci major really, really has something to say. That's me. I'm not dissing on anybody. I wasn't like calling someone out. I was talking about myself.
I figured it was you,
Very few very few professions that make like a college degree worth it. If you're not going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something like that, just go to trade school or learn a skill.
Mhm. Yeah, I have
I had
lineman
another-
friends who do that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I have friends who went into trade school, make 6 figures a year, and have 0 student debt at all.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I did have one more piece of advice for people, and that's if you go out to dinner or something and you're dealing with a server, tip in cash.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
That's a simple one, but I believe in it very, very much.
Okay, I think that about wraps everything up. If nobody else has anything to add, follow all these lovely ladies on their social media that they plugged in the very, very beginning. And I'm sure BR would love to put all of the links in the description. If I remember to tell him, I'll remember to tell him. I really will. Thanks for tuning in, and have a happy International Women's Day. Do something
Yay.
special for the lady in your life.
Bye.